Welcome everyone to the series of discussions points that Summit is hosting with the relevant directors in the industry, just to take us through some of their thoughts, of course, around what the business is actually looking forward to, or what is going to happen in the future for business, and also some of the things that employers or maybe the business can do to make sure of the well-being of our workforce. Yeah, and then of course our special guest, which is Debbie Craig. Welcome again, Debbie Craig, the founder and the MD for Catalyst Consulting, which is, of course, the consulting company that has been in the industry for now 22 years, and also gave birth to our World Alive, which is also something that, of course, one can be interested in. It is an empowerment and a transformation or transformational company that was established, of course, in 2007. And something that I really like about Debbie is the books that she has written. She's the author of 3 books, which is I Am Talent, I Am Alive, and Accelerated Learning, something that we are mostly familiar with, I'm sure. And of course, we've also got Matthew Lambert. Sorry, I call him Matt. He's the MD of Summit and also part of the discussion today. So I'm not going to take too much of time, but some of the things that I'm sure everyone is really, really interested in is the context around the outbreak of COVID-19 and the well-being of our employees, which is something that we would like to pick your thoughts on, of course, for today's discussion. And for us to start the discussion today, it's going to be Debbie Craig. And of course, I'm going to please just maybe take a look at the question in excuse me. If you take a look at the outbreak of COVID-19 and the future of business, taking a look at what we are going to be going into when we step out of lockdown, what are your thoughts, and what are some of the things that businesses can do that would make sure that they still reinforce the workplace practices and make sure that their employees are fully focused in the work and the environment itself, Debbie?
Thanks. It's a big question, I think, on a lot of our leaders and employees' minds at the moment. I was actually just reflecting on that this week because I've been reading some things around culture and communication, and you know, I think we're at an ideal time now to use this time and this opportunity to actually start embedding some of the cultural artifacts and behaviors that will enable our staff to continue into the future as we face more and more changes as we go forward. I know that, you know, in the first week or two, most of the leaders were in crisis meetings and just trying to keep the ship afloat and trying to put cover the holes and get people with the equipment and get them home and get them safe. And then the second week we were into scenario planning and the what if and how do we manage our cash flow and how do we, you know, arrange our staff. So there was scenario planning and what could this mean for our business in the future. And I think that there was not that much time available, totally understandable in those first, two weeks or so or 3 weeks to think about what's going on in our employees. How are they feeling? How are they engaged? Are they able to feel part of an organization, or are they feeling more part of a family in crisis or busy with trying to now educate the kids and feed everybody and try and be on 10 Zooms a day and having digital fatigue. So I think it's an ideal opportunity now to start working with employees as leaders at a level where we start reaching out and caring for them, finding out where they're at first before we ask more of them, and then start collaborating and co-creating with them in terms of imagining what this future could look like and what are some of the skills that we're going to be needing to create this future together. I know we're going to be running another webinar on some of those sort of specific skills, but I mean, some of the little things that we're doing with our team is taking Zoom for an example. We got one of our colleagues to run a Zoom session on how to use Zoom with more options and more opportunities, annotations and hands ups and that kind of thing. We've got everybody to cut and edit a video for us using Microsoft Photos. And now we've started on Mural this week, and how to do online team engagement sessions using Post-it notes digitally. And each week we're trying to learn another little skill. And I think if we can just reach out and connect through a learning space that also is an engaging space, that also is a caring space, I think we can start setting people up for how we can work together and co-create the future as a unit, and not necessarily just telling people what we think as leaders needs to happen.
Yeah, I like that very much, especially at the part where you're saying how we're actually going to unite, which actually takes me to my next question. Not exactly a question, but just picking on your thoughts, Matt, on how can we now take a look at uniting and just making sure of our employee well-being, and also just maybe building a culture, because this is something that we are going to be doing moving forward, because I don't want to touch on the skill, as you said, Debbie, we're still going to actually have more topics around the skills that we are looking at. So yes, Matt.
Yeah, so I think before I carry on, obviously it's always nice to share a forum with Debbie. I like it for selfish reasons, because I get to speak to her and learn from her and get little pieces of wisdom. Maybe I just kind of thinking about what Debbie was saying in terms of essentially around communication with staff and how to do that in effective manners to make them feel inclusive. Debbie, what are your thoughts in terms of kind of this working environment we're in? Is it sort of a more frequent, sort of less shorter rhythm in terms of communication, or what are your thoughts in respect of that? Because I know we typically come from an environment where we got a weekly status meeting, and it's an hour or 2 hours, and that's sort of the meeting in respect of the team for the week. There might be individual meetings, but what are your thoughts in respect of that?
Well, look, I think there's organizational communication and then there's team-based communication. I think at an organizational level, we should be sending something out on a weekly basis. I mean, I don't know how you felt about, Cyril and our president coming at a sort of a 10-day interval, sometimes even less. And actually, it's amazing how we all sort of cluster around the TV and actually sit and almost wait for that leadership message that's directly impacting us. And I think people feel that as well, if they're leaders that have got their well-being and their income in their hands, that hearing from them, and preferably visually through a video or through a Zoom or through something or a massive broadcast, to keep the connection, I think is absolutely important that it happens sort of on a weekly drumbeat. I think from a team perspective, what I've noticed a lot of people doing and has been working for me is moment by moment, we're on a WhatsApp group and we've got some protocols around how to reduce noise but create value through keeping in touch with WhatsApps. I've got some teams, I've got some bigger groups also, and then there's Slack for more sort of the business communication, and then there's a daily or twice weekly check-in. That's also where you can see each other visually, because I do think there's an important hormonal impact and emotional impact of actually seeing people. So there's, if you're just sending texts, you don't get the oxytocin and the hormonal lift to feel good about yourself. When you see somebody, you see the facial expressions, or you hear people's warmth or stress in their voice, you have a different emotional connection with people. So I do think more regular, shorter check-ins. And we know that, sitting in a meeting, you might be sitting in a 2-3 hour meeting or an 8-hour training day. That's not possible for a couple of reasons and where we are now. But people's, I don't know if you've heard of digital fatigue or zooming out, but people are finding it really tiring.
Zooming out is one thing I can identify with,
it gets tiring, and we don't take physical body breaks or regular enough coffee breaks, or just chit-chatting, walking to, somewhere and back to create that balance of intense focus and energy, and also being at a screen. So I do believe that a more regular touch points, but I do think also that we need to have some protocols around how we run those meetings, because it can waste a lot of time if you're just sort of spitballing and chatting. Create some space for engagement and for checking in and how we're doing, and then have a set agenda for like an ops meeting agenda or something to move through, so that you're actually getting the work done as well.
Yeah, I think, I massively agree with you. I think it's an approach that we've taken in our organization, and exactly to what you're saying in respect of sort of the president and the leadership message and seeing the president, it reminds me, and I've obviously aged very well, but if I'm not mistaken, it was Reagan used to have his fire time talks, or kind of talks to and we addressed the nation in a very almost casual like environment, in front of he had his TV to the left, right, a whiskey in hand, and obviously he was an actor by trade prior, so probably came natural, but really, and that sort of communication platform, stood him in good stead, regardless of his policies, etc. But yeah, so obviously I remember watching those in South Africa a couple of, 30, 40 years ago. So I've obviously
many years ago, Matt, you are looking
good.
Exactly.
But I think exactly what you said is that in terms of the organization, you're right. There's, some set kind of regular rhythms that need to occur. And I think those rhythms, definitely from a video perspective, you've got the capability, must be shared in that manner. And I think it does do something but different. It doesn't, it's less, even though it's virtual, it's less is left to interpretation, because you can see the person, you can see the response, the mood, you can almost feel the sincerity or whatever message may be conveying. Like I said, I agree with you that organizational rhythm, I think on at least a weekly basis, also creates, I've noticed other people in sort of my friend circles, etc., professional circles, where organizations don't tend to do that. There's a lot of anxiety, and I can see it in them. They feel a little bit lost, even in terms of their current work, because they also lose sight of, what are they doing right now, and what is it working towards? What are they trying to achieve? And, sometimes maybe as a senior leader in an organization, you take that for granted because you believe, well, I've stated that, I don't know, at the beginning of the year or wherever it is in my strategic memo or whatever it may be. But when it comes into some form of crisis like this is, that, people lose sight of what was said, 2 months ago, a month ago, whatever the case, even last week. So that rhythmic certainty, we know that we're going to receive a communication from our CEO on Tuesday or whatever the case, or whenever it's being communicated, just creates and reduces anxiety, I think, is the point.
The other thing, Matt, I think there's an ideal opportunity. We've got a big client now, and we're busy designing a cultural integration journey. We've got another one that we've been in the journey for about 8-9 months. And for both of the situations, there's an ideal opportunity to use the communication and the leadership message to talk about values and how we all together can live those values. So whether the value is innovation, and we need to work together to find creative ways of responding and pivoting to our customer needs or to our staff needs, whether it is about teamwork and working together with your team to figure out the best ways of communicating and interacting and getting stuff done, which is now remote and online. If we weave those value messages in with a leadership example and a leadership suggestion, I think it's an ideal time now to really do some really nice embedding of the culture. But also, we can't preach what we don't deliver. So to really have a very hard look and have that on the agenda at our scenario planning meetings or our ops meetings, and going, so how have we done the last couple of days and pick just one or two, cultural aspects for that meeting, and to say, how are we doing on this? And is there anything else that we can do differently or better to show that we are being the examples and creating the culture we're going to need for this future period that we're moving into? Because we're going to have to get people that are open to change and agile and working together, collaborating, innovating. And if we don't have that as a value set, and we have a more sort of traditional wait for instructions and whatever that value set is, we're going to find it more difficult as we move into a new world coming out of this.
Yeah, of course. I also I took a very important note to that digital fatigue that you spoke about, because I'm sure this is something that we are all actually suffering from at this very moment. And if you're speaking of your serotonin And then, of course, you're speaking of your dopamine. These are some of the things that people need to really be exposed to in order to understand how they actually balance that. And maybe just to take a bit, just as a collaborative from both of you guys, what are some of the things that you have actually done during this time to make sure that you balance those chemicals so that you actually keep a healthy mind and are able to still continue with everything that is planned for your day? It can be from anyone, just from the both of you. Some of the things that you have been doing during this time just to keep healthy, a healthy mind and balancing those chemicals.
Yeah, so Debbie, you go first.
Okay. Look, this is very close to my heart because I've just come back from a meditative retreat end of last year, and I've just done my Neurochange Solutions Facilitator training literally 2 weeks before the lockdown. And we trained on the neuroscience of the brain and the hormones and the chemicals. So, I mean, the most effective way of managing your emotional response and your thoughts to life and your chemical balance is to spend that quiet time. And whether that quiet time for you is spending some time in meditation or in what we call an alpha state, bringing your alpha brainwaves down, or whether it's gardening for you, or whether it's doing a gentle yoga class, we need to find a way of calming our brains and also moving into what we call heart space. And that's being able to breathe and fill our bodies with the positive, higher frequency emotions rather than those horrible dark gremlins of frustration and fear and anxiety that we're all experiencing anyway, but we want to kind of just turn down the volume of those and increase the volume of the gratitude for what we do have. And the fact that we can engage online with our colleagues and continue some of the work or get creative are beautiful things we can be thankful for. So for me, spending time beginning of the day and the end of the day, of having that quiet time, setting up my day. And one of the most powerful statements that I keep on asking myself, and this comes from Dr. Joe Dispenza, is, you know, who do you want to be today? When you open your eyes, who are you going to be? And just keep on reminding yourself, do you want to be a stressed out, exhausted, distracted person running around and not really getting anywhere? Or are you going to be today, or at least for a piece of your day, be focused and constructive and contribute, but also allow yourself the space to relax? And I think, I mean, my first 10 days was 21-day yoga class and, you know, write 10 chapters of my book and, you know, try and compensate for this change, but also realize that that's not actually so healthy as either, and that we actually need to create some space in the craziness for some chill time and for some me time and for not having an objective time and somehow balance that out. So that's what I'm working on.
Yeah, so I wish I could. I wish I could do better. Obviously, as we always do. But I think probably maybe I'm not a good person to take advice from. But I'm very much a sort of A-type personality, or someone who is prone to more anxiety, I guess, than others. Which you know, you might see is from a. I think a lot of leaders are actually in that sort of category set, although it may not look like from the outside, but internally there's, you know, the little duck legs below the water are kicking so very hard, and I think it's just a function of, you know, trying to think and plan and, you know, create tons of different possible strategies or events that could occur, and then a strategy to kind of put in place or rectify that event. So, you know, this for me, I think throughout my whole life has been something that has needed to be addressed. So, you know, I kind of would say not too much of a change during lockdown, maybe perhaps in the way I execute some of the things. But, you know, fundamentally for me, there's kind of 3 or 4, maybe there's more as I put them down, things that I kind of need to do in a day for me to have a successful day. And it's relatively simple, and there's a lot of literature behind all of these approaches. But, you know, one thing my whole life has always been exercise. Whatever that exercise is for you, for me, a variation of cardio or weight training, whatever the case may be, but exercise.
Or running 25 times around your garden.
running doing a marathon on your balcony. I mean,
Yes.
whatever floats your boat. It's definitely something from our perspective. And the key, I mean, I don't want to go maybe too much into this because I could spend like, at least 2-3 hours on this, but I think the key is just to do a little bit, just to do something. And so, I've got like I'll continue in respect to the things I do, but even just to do a little bit, I think my biggest challenge for me for a large part of my life was, well, I need to do all of it and all of it perfectly. So if I need to exercise if I need to do 5 things and one of them is exercise an hour in that day for that day, then I must do that hour. About 4 years ago, I had my first child, and I've got my third one coming up very soon. So, that changed a lot. And, it had to be a bit more flexible. So the point is, of the things listing, for me, it's exercise, even if it's 15, 20 minutes, 10 minutes, to get something, journaling, and just really to put the lizard brain, as I guess Seth Godin would call it, at rest, is write what you're feeling currently. And then importantly, within that writing, I do have at least 3 things I'm thankful for in that particular day. And then meditation. So, I mean, not that Debbie and I had the same script, but I think meditation is something, obviously a lot of people would refer to it as mindfulness currently, but it is something of great use. And, I think a lot of people perceive meditation to be, sitting in a specific pose and for an hour. And something that I've sort of slowly started to realize is a little bit of something is better than nothing. And, I'm the type of person who works better when, I guess, prompted, if I could put it that in some degree, or assisted. And so that's why I always, like elements that involve coaching, whatever the case would be. But the point is, I use an app. There's many of them. I use Headspace, but there's Calm, there's 10% Happier, there's an array of different, and I'm just touching on sort of the more prominent ones. And, their guided meditations are very effective and useful. And, even if it's for 2 minutes, the point is, if you can get a little bit of these things, and I do believe it has a massive impact. And then lastly, to end off, I know it's a bit long, but I'm a massive fan of a specific type of philosophy, so Stoicism. It's got a bit of a mixed rep, I guess, if you'd like to call it the aspects I do love about the philosophy is that, in essence, is that an event is just an event, and it's how you judge that event that creates the emotions or that you feel, or the attachment that you have to that event. So if you can sometimes, although that's a bit meta, if you can remove yourself from the actual event for once and just almost look at it from a helicopter view, it gives you a little bit more of a perspective. And that's, yes, it's difficult to do often when you're in it, but if you can practice that type of approach, and there's some great authors like Ryan Holiday, who's got some really great entry-level books into sort of the philosophy and why it's important. So I guess reading a bit of that philosophy, and then the journaling, exercise, and meditation are really sort of, if I get those 4 things in, I know I usually have a relatively decent day.
Matt, just a small addition to the, because of the brain science that I've learned just recently, that even if it is for a couple of minutes, if you can get your brain waves from beta to alpha, right, which is a slower, calmer, that alert, relaxed state, you automatically bring your focus and your energy to your frontal lobe, and you calm down the lizard brain. So your analytical mind can sort of calm down, and therefore your emotions calm down. When you're in your frontal lobe, you've got the ability to have metacognition, which means you can watch yourself thinking, you can watch yourself doing, and you can make better choices. And also what the frontal lobe does is it enables you to envision a future, which we all need to do now. And your alpha state also takes out the negative. So you typically will be envisioning a positive, optimistic, inspiring, hopeful future. So I think just from a pure science perspective, if we can just practice moving into that quieter space, which there's many techniques online, and you can just do it through some nice deep breathing, we create the advantage for us to be able to watch, choose, and visualize something which is nice and positive and keeps us motivated.
Awesome.
All right.
Great data to support my ticks, my daily ticks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just wanted to say that just a bit, sorry about that, Matt, is that, I'm trying to do a bit of an extreme sport here, taking down some notes as you guys are talking. And of course, thinking back to, of course, the time that we have for today. And just to be precise, we've got 5 minutes. And then with that being said, I also just want to say by what you guys are actually giving input to, or some of the pointers that you guys have given, of course, it looks like the future of business is going to be abundant communication. And of course, we're just looking at the broader streams of the ways in which we are going to be communicating. And then if you have any burning innovative ideas that business can actually use for the future, I'd like for you to take please this 3 minutes, maybe to share those, and we'll just go into our closing for this discussion today. Can go back to you, Matt.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, I think I might go longer than 3 minutes, so apologies to people watching this, but hopefully this is a very useful part. This is what, or hopefully I can impart some usefulness in respect of this. And, you know, I think the first question is always for me is like, and yes, albeit a stupid question, but why do you innovate? And what is the point? And, you know, a lot of people will say, well, that's really self-evident. But I think it's not as self-evident as you expect it to be. And for me, you know, the point of innovation is very, look, innovation, I think, is obviously, we all know it's overused, it's cliche, etc. So whatever you want to call it, problem solving, you know, going back to its roots, essentially. And yes, you've got different aspects of innovation, incremental, disruptive, but I'm not going to go into that. I'm just going to sort of put in some really basic ideations and blueprints that we put forward in our organization that's seeming to work and very low cost of implementation. But I think going back to the point is, you know, focusing on what is the point of innovation. And someone for me who does it in quite a comical manner and very useful manner is Guy Kawasaki. You can we'll post some resources and links to this recording, and which you can access everything that we speak about. And he has a great talk on the art of innovation, and really focuses on why sort of innovation is necessary. And I'm going to give you sort of a brief couple of pointers from that as to why innovation is necessary, and problem solving is necessary in this climate, and albeit very obvious for some people, for others maybe not so. So, you know, one of the elements around innovation is it grants meaning and purpose. And, you know, how is that? You know, if you look at, for example, Apple was really as a starting point, their purpose was to democratize computers. And what that did for them was it changed the way in which they approach business. So in essence, what they wanted to do is make sure that everyone could access a computer, meaning that it wasn't just for the very technical people, and that it was very easy to utilize. And, you know, granting that access to everyone from an engineering and design perspective then filtered into a lot of the other products. Yes, they moved from beyond computers, but that thought process, that thinking, that meaning that it granted them, gave them the ability to move beyond just computers and focus on other devices, which they could basically democratize access and ease of use and fluidness of their product. I mean, he uses a great, which kind of combines a couple of things in the talk, but he uses a great example where, you know, how innovation can grant purpose or make meaning by creating that particular statement is by not having constraints. So what I mean by that is, let's say your purpose or meaning, very simply, was to ensure people could keep their food for longer. Okay. And yes, very strange example, but that's essentially why we went around the aspects or created refrigeration eventually. But it started off, people used to store things, and they used to store things with, obviously they needed ice. And so in the early 1900s, you literally would, in certain parts of obviously Europe, North America, very cold parts, wait until winter. Winter came, you then went out into the lake, you cut out blocks of ice, big blocks of ice, and then, you use those over a period of time to store food as long as you possibly could. And then eventually that business moved on to industrial ice makers, these factories that created ice, and they could ship ice to you whenever you needed. So that was the next quantum leap in this particular sort of innovation curve. And then, kind of where we are today in respect of refrigeration and having your own personal refrigerator where you can store your food. And so the point being is that the ice cutters weren't the people who then went and created the industrial ice manufacturing companies. And those companies weren't the companies that then went into the refrigeration space, because they had defined themselves as operating in a small segment. We are ice cutters, cut ice. We're an industrial ice makers, we manufacture ice. And versus saying that actually our purpose is to create mechanisms that allow people to store food and access it for longer, which helps them plan better, etc. So if they define their purpose a bit broader, it means that you're always working towards that and are able to create the next iteration of your business. And that's really quite important, I guess, in this particular period that we're in. And then the other sort of key point from it was really, there's a phrase in the talk where he talks about let 100 flowers blossom, which is something taken from Jim Mao. But the point being is that and this is why I guess innovation is also so important and really important now, is when Apple built the Macintosh, they believed they had this powerful, intuitive database, word processor, spreadsheet-based machine that was going to revolutionize the market. And when they got it out there to the people, to the customers, what it was actually used for was desktop publishing through a program they had on there called Aldous PageMaker. And that's really who started using the Macintosh, was individuals focused on, desktop publishing. And that's what customers used it for. And that's what it became known for. And so the point being is that, not to say in this current sort of position that we're in, not to have a market that you're focusing on, a specific message that you're going with, and not having done the work. But once you're out there and once your customers start using your products in ways that you perhaps didn't believe or weren't aware that were going to occur, and that's the reason why they're using it, then you've got to pivot. And that's the point, is that now in this time, you're going to put new things out there because we have to survive. And the way in which you envision whatever that service or product being used, and it's not in the manner, and it's in a different manner, then you need to shift your business to serve the manner that the product is being used. And that's really what Apple did at the time as well. So I think that's why what's the point of innovation? And then I think to your point, Akule, is just, tools or frameworks that any sort of business can implement, and, also for, very low cost base. And, a lot of people are sitting idle at this point in time, as we're aware, perhaps have thought a lot and thought a lot about the business, or just thinking a lot. And, you really want to kind of have them thinking in a productive manner, because the reality of it is that, lockdown will probably end, and there's going to be some type of, or quarantine will end, and there's going to be some type of sort of phased return. So you're still going to have people who aren't going to be sort of fully operational and thinking, and you want to tap into their minds in a productive manner. So, I kind of call this, you want to tap into the gold in your team's minds and your employees' minds. And, everyone down the line has had this idea where, it's communicated to the company, hey guys, provide this great idea and you can win a gift card. and it never works. And I'm sure a lot of you watching are saying, oh Jesus, this is what the psycho is telling me, I'm going to switch off now. And it's not in many ways, because you're right, that doesn't work when when the business is in kind of that full operational mode. And really there's two reasons it doesn't work. Is one, people don't participate, and or the ideas aren't worth implementing, because the ideas that come through are ones that perhaps not really thought through too well. We want a foosball table, or that's going to help us work better, or whatever the case may be. So if you look at where we are right now and each one of those problems, say, well, people don't participate in my mind, for two reasons when you try these type of programs. Incentives are low. That 20 Rand gift card kind of for them, they feel is not really worth the time to put anything forward, or operations get in the way. So, this hurdle is, very much addressed because one, the stakes are high. People know that businesses are at risk currently, and they've got to look at any which way in which to assist or provide ideas. And so I think the incentives are high at this particular point in time. And then the other part of that is the ops side of things gets in the way. And we know obviously that's got less of a ability to do that currently. So, that kind of, in my mind, really addresses the participation side of things. The other ones is, kind of the other ones is the ideas aren't worth implementing because people don't have and for me, that's because people don't have a framework for asking the right questions that lead to better ideas. It's like saying we're going to have a fishing competition, guys. Whoever wins the biggest fish gets the prize money, but no one knows how to, take a rod and cast it or put a hook on. So of course you're not going to get any decent sized fish or anything to work with. So, how we, I guess, have gone around addressing this is internally we've created a program, a training program in essence, which focuses on, what is this innovation and why, why is it important and why should we be involved in it? Isn't this just something for, the people in the ivory tower per se? And so the most critical thing for, team members and employees to understand is that why, as we all know. And then, the other aspects of the program, what it focuses on is how do you ask the right questions? And when I know what the question is, how do I go about solving it? And then once I have an idea of solving it, what can I do, or what framework can I use to create almost this minimum viable product to test, my idea, or minimal viable service, essentially, to test my idea. So, in the program that we created is very simple and very curated, and we're going to actually offer all the resources in respect of the links to the different elements that we use and how we structured it after it. But it's really around giving people the tool set to be able to think about problems and create some type of solution that realistically can be implemented. So it requires that, the employees have to think a little bit better or a little bit more through than just submitting an idea. And then sort of to accompany this, you need really a process. So how do ideas get submitted? How do they get voted on? And which ideas do you plan to roll out, and how do you action them? So, we create our own little process internally, and we use our own learning experience platform. But I mean, this is something that you can create without that type of platform. Obviously, it does make it a hell of a lot easier. But the point is you can still create it. And we're going to share that process and really the program with you. But for me, those are, you've got a workforce that has the ability to actually create ideas that can save your business. It's just about how do you utilize it effectively. And from our perspective, that's what we've focused on, and it's looking to pay dividends. So sorry, a bit longer than 3 minutes, Gule, but yeah, a very important question that you asked.
Yeah, but very, very, of course, relevant and, of course, very important as well. And it's very realistic. Anything that you would like to share before we close, Debbie?
I'll literally only use a minute, I hope. It's just some closing comments. And I think I just want to build on what Matt said, is that I think this time is an ideal time to encourage and build a learning culture. And a learning culture is where people think for themselves, they've got self-driven learning, they're learning to learn in the flow of work. So as you know, as for example, you talk to someone on Zoom and they say, oh, I'm experimenting on Mural, is like for those next 5 minutes, you go in, you search bar, you go into Mural, you look and see, and then you get into a collaborative thing and say, let's try something. So that just even 10 minutes once a day, you're learning something new and you're starting to build a culture that does ask the right questions and asking the team leaders to be able to pull some of that together into the viable service levels or product levels. And that we become natural innovators in our own lives and natural innovators in working as a team. So for me, it's about the learning culture, it's about collaborative innovation, and it's around the agility to be able to pivot and quickly do something as your customers' needs changes. And I think our teams are often the closest to our customers. And we need to figure out what is our real true value to those customers and to our stakeholders. And in this time, it's really, really interesting to see what are people pulling from us, for example. So normally it's kind of like, you know, go off and do these things because we've got to do learning programs and talent programs or whatever. But right now it's, can you help us think through this thing? Or can you help us design something that's really going to work? Or can you help us structure our communication? And we're realizing that our true value is around that thought partnership and structuring and visualizing a roadmap for people that they can then go and do what they're good at anyway. So finding that value, and your teams are going to start figuring out and asking those kind of questions, I think, which will create that learning culture, and therefore the innovations will start flowing through the process. So it's quite a lot to get through, but I do think that this is an ideal opportunity where there's a little bit of space to do those little learning nuggets and come up with some new creative ideas together.
Yeah, 100%. Of course, we've got to be compensating, of course, for this change, yeah, one way or the other. And then, of course, with that being said, thank you very much. And thank you so much for your time, Debbie and Matt, in sharing your ideas. And, of course, some of the things that people can do, not only people, but businesses can do to make sure that they implement some strategies when it comes to the well-being of their employees and things that they can do for the future. And I'd like to take this back to Matt. Of course, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think I've said quite a lot in respect of that and kind of the previous points, and we've covered quite a lot. So I think maybe I want to save a little bit, not try and do the elephant all in one bite, and save it for topics coming forward, to hopefully keep viewers satisfied. We can do like a little bit of a cliff ending, not answer the question, and tune in next time and we'll answer that question. And maybe park it for then, and just, to add to what Debbie sort of said is really that I think the point has come where these are, as everyone says, very uncertain times, etc. But I think the point is that it's highly unpredictable, and the more people you have thinking about the problems in your business, and they've been given strong frameworks to help them think about those problems and potentially, if not try and solve them, start to ask the right questions that, oh, why does this problem exist? Let me think a little bit more deeply about it. It means that not all the pressure is put onto senior leadership in effect, and the point is you're really democratizing your problem solving in your business. And I think in order to survive going forward, it's something that you need to do, because those people's capacity from a problem solving perspective can be limited due to fatigue or whatever the case may be. So if you spread the load, I think it'll have a lot more positive impacts on business.
Yes, 100%. So as you said, we don't want to be covering too much on one because of course we're going to be having future discussions with Ben. I'd like to wish you a great afternoon. And yes, it's my birthday. I think it's time for me to celebrate. But if I still have
Wow, happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday, you know.
Where's the cake? You got to share the cake online. You know, that's the
I
new
don't,
thing.
I'm on a diet. I can afford some, of course, low calorie wine. Yeah.
That's the boring one. Always the best things are the high fat, the high calorie. That's the one that you want.
All righty then.
Well, have a
So
great day.
that's it.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Abe.